When the Ocean Runs Red, an audiobook written and performed by Luis Armando Lopez Jr. Copyright 2017. All rights reserved. Recorded at the Santa Fe Center Studios with Doug Geist. Part 1. Under the Blood Moon. The crimson hue reflected by the moonlight cast the island in an ominous mood. Iquitol took it as an omen and a favorable sign. The priest of the carnivorous fish god Dagon long felt wilted by the uninspired majority of his tribe. They drifted from their beliefs in Dagon and turned to more pragmatic views instead. Spiritual things were just not as important as they had been in the past. Several reasons existed for this. Prosperity had a way of muting spiritual meaning, and comfort made belief, especially the more violent ones, more of an accessory than essential. The tribe forgot about Dagon, and tributes to him became almost non-existent. The blood sacrifices were no longer offered. Only Iquitol remained faithful. Incarnates of Dagon had not been seen for quite some time either. The impossibly giant sharks seldom appeared during the tribal fishing incursions, and as such no one valued the need for protection from his savage teeth. Some even dared to say that Dagon no longer existed. These same folks went further to suggest peace with other tribes on the neighboring islands. The Carcarians' tribe seldom knew peace, and many of their traditions bordered on the horrific side of humanity. Acts of brutal savagery and cannibalism had been practiced by the shark priests of Dagon for as long as remembered. Men did not question the gods, and when the shark priests so ordered, the oceans were painted red with the blood of enemies. Iquitol belonged to that order, and it bit him deeply that everything he knew and believed in was being cast into the shadows of forgotten memory. The priest's heart stirred with angst. He needed to find a way to motivate his placid tribe to the ferocity of the old ways. Iquitol licked his sharp triangular teeth with his forked tongue and drew a trickle of blood. He mischievously savored the drop and schemed for a way to bring the bloody carnage of Dagon's worship back into prominence. The rites of the shark priests included many disfigurements, such as the splitting of their tongues to resemble the great sea serpents. Their teeth were filed down to resemble the shark emissaries of Dagon. Ritualistic scarring and tattoos were also of import to the order. However, the most tragic thing about the shark priesthood hinged upon something known as the calling. Membership was entirely voluntary, and no one in a great age joined the order. Few desired to undergo the brutal and life-threatening trials that shaped a shark priest. Iquitol stood as the last in a lineage of a dying belief. Without even as much as a sighting of Dagon incarnate in many moons, people just did not believe in the great shark anymore. No one worships gods they believe to be dead, and the tribe believed Dagon to be dead. Only Iquitol knew otherwise. He knew that because of the deep stirring in his soul. Dagon lived. He just needed to find a way to convince his tribe again. Iquitol reasoned that just the right murder could do the trick. Peace and surplus had quieted his tribe. However, if the right person was killed, and the right story justified, then angered minds could easily be pushed over the edge and back into frenzied madness. The trick lay with who exactly to kill. Few members of the tribe could stir such tremendous offense in the wake of their deaths. Iquitol's head wrestled with a headache full of scheming when the answer walked up to him in the guise of a warm old woman. Mama Annie approached, steadying her gait with a long but curved stave. The old woman suffered from a disfiguring bend in her upper spine that made it difficult for her to look up too far from the sand she walked upon. Mama's face was an ocean of wrinkles, each line rich with character, and her hair was as white as the sea foam. She belonged to the other half of the tribe's spirituality. Mama Annie represented the Moon Mother and embodied the powers of hope and the renewal of life. She was the balancing female element to the more masculine and warlike shark priests of Dagon. The time of Dagon had seemed to recede in favor of the Moon Mother. Iquitol loathed this fact, but continued to play along, pretending to be okay with what was supposed to be the natural order. "There is a time for all things, Iquitol. The time of Dagon will rise again. Such is the order of the gods," Mama Eni comforted. Iquitol gave a nod of acknowledgement and turned his gaze back to the blood moon. "Dagon speaks to us, but remains distant. This moon is a message, but I doubt the tribe will hear it." Iquitol insisted. "Indeed it is a message, but times change. The worship of Dagon must change too, or it will fade away. Our tribe needs to adapt and grow. We can be more. Look how we have overcome our problems. Once we lived like bloodthirsty scavengers, never far from death ourselves. The great Moon Mother taught us stability. Now we have a great surplus of food. We no longer sleep in the open, but in sturdy wooden homes. We have even made great vessels that can tame the sea itself. Wooden ships. We fish with ease, and can glide across the ocean like the incarnate Dagon himself." Mama Eni spoke. Iquitol twitched with irritation. It had been bad enough for his belief to be in recession. The very last thing he desired was to be lectured about it. The shark priest's head twitched with growing rage. He wanted to say something that bit back as hard as Mama Eni's words, but knew that he lacked the eloquence to do so effectively. He chose instead a more diplomatic approach. "What is this moon if not a sign that Dagon yet lives, and that we must pay tribute to him?" Iquitol retorted, baring his predatory shark-like teeth and something that only loosely resembled a smile. Mama Eni recoiled from the shark priest, knowing her words were taken in offense. She had not intended for them to be received so poorly, but she understood. Mama Eni reasoned that it must be a terrible thing for Iquitol to witness the power of his belief wither before his eyes. She only wanted to comfort him and affirm that a place for the shark priesthood still existed within the tribe. "I fear you take my words the wrong way, Iquitol," Mama Eni assured. "Is that so? Tell me then, Moon Mother, what is it you see?" "I see our Mother Moon, changing blood red to tell us that Dagon will always have a place among the Carcarians' tribe. She tells us that the shark priest must adapt to find a place in the new way of things. Let go of the savagery, Iquitol. Leave the blood for the ocean waters. The ways of Dagon have passed, but that does not mean we cannot still honor him." Iquitol chuckled skeptically. Throughout the entire conversation he had been surveying the surrounding area. The rest of the tribe had retired to sleep in the dark of the night. Just he and the Moon Mother were present, and they were somewhat far off, standing atop a large hill to witness tonight's eclipse. No one would see, no one would hear her screams. "Funny, Mama Eni. I took tonight's sign entirely differently," Iquitol threatened. He cast his sharkskin cloak off, revealing his well-muscled frame and an ominous sacrificial knife. The powerful man stretched his arms outward and bared his shark-like teeth in an intimidating posture. As easy as it would have been to focus on the shark priest's massive physique, Mama Eni's eyes never left the sacrificial knife, which remained sheathed for the time being. The knife was used to cut out the hearts of human enemies as tribute to Dagon, but it tasted no human blood as of late. Only the worthless offerings of fish innards quailed the blade's bloodlust. Iquitol decided tonight to change that. Mama Eni's first reaction was to flee, but she knew she was far too old to get away. Instead, she invested in the hope that things were not as they seemed. It made no sense for the great shark to consume her. After all, Iquitol was her grandson. "I don't get what you play at, Iquitol. To spill my blood would be to kill yourself. I am your grandmother, the sacred representative of the Moon Mother. Would you let a bruised ego cast you so low, my grandson?" The words seemed to temporarily quell Equatol's rage. He turned his back to Mama Annie and once again gazed at the blood moon, which now faded into clouded obscurity. Just enough moonlight shone through the clouds to cast the world in silver light.
"I think you misread the sign, Mama Annie. It is Dagon who speaks to us, and not the Moon Mother. He tells us to paint the ocean red, and that he will return to us in a red wake."
Preposterous! Can you not see any more, Equatol? Is it not the moon that speaks to us? Not the frenzied tide? If you force the fates, Dagon will return to you, and you would become one with him. But it will not be as you think. Cast away this foolishness, and walk with me back to our village. We can discuss this further in the morning, after we have both gotten some sleep. Equatol did not protest and turned to leave, ever gently taking Mama Annie's arm to assist her down the rocky trail, strangely leaving his sharkskin cloak discarded on the ground.
"As you say, Mama Annie."
Mama Annie felt comforted by the act, thinking that common sense had prevailed. Yet a growing discomfort stirred within her. Her mind raced back to the sacrificial knife. She searched for it on Equatol's belt and found it strangely absent, as was Equatol's other arm, not disconnected from his body but raised high in the air. Her eyes followed the contour of the limb, from shoulder to elbow, then from elbow to hand, and rediscovered the knife tightly held in a white-knuckled fist. With horror, Mama Annie's eyes met her grandson's. They were cold and black, like Dagon's himself. The blade fell and rose again with wet tears and rent the old woman's flesh to savage ruin. Her blood appeared dark silver under the moonlight. Annie collapsed, and her life seeped away from her. Equatol's savage assault continued, the sacrificial blade continuing to disfigure the old woman beyond recognition. A strange peace set in over Mama Annie as she passed over to the afterlife, perhaps as a last comfort of the great Moon Mother. The terror and pain of death fled away, and the old woman found the strength to utter a last few words with a wet cough of blood. The sudden surge of will by Mama Annie powerfully stopped her grandson's violence.
"Equatol, be careful what you ask for. You shall indeed become one with Dagon, but I promise you, you will not like the reality of it."
With those last words, Mama Annie gave up the ghost. The shock and horror of his actions finally overcame Equatol. He dropped the knife and screamed.
"Ah!"
The killing of his grandmother was unlike any other he had committed, in some ways more exhilarating. But Equatol felt a weight of shame and pain that cut him to his core. What had he done? The priest wailed in sorrowful pain. Just then a huge wave slammed into the rocky hillside with thunderous impact. The wave drew Equatol's attention back to the ocean. The murder was Dagon's will, and like Mama Annie promised, Equatol would reunite with his god, the god of the ocean and bloody murder. Part 2. Divine Purpose. The Carcarian village awoke to torrid, chaotic energy. It had been discovered that the revered Moon Mother, Mama Annie, had been murdered during the night. While other mothers of the divine moon existed, the tribe was wholly unprepared to cope with such a tragic and unexpected loss. Worst of all was Equatol. The grandson of Annie wailed inconsolably and festered with vengeful rage.
"We have neglected the ways of Dagon for too long. Our tribe lost its way and exchanged peace for a lie. And look where it got us. Our beloved Mama Annie lay dead. Her poor body brutally mutilated, almost beyond recognition. Our enemies did this because they think we are weak."
Equatol venomously spat. His terrible words found some willing ears, but many more remained reluctant to turn so easily to anger. These people remembered the ways of peace and held no desires to return to the savage ways they thought to have left behind. In the heat of such torrid and brooding hate, all the peaceful members of the tribe Carcarion could do was protest with silence. And irrationality coexists with rage, blindness being chief amongst such traits. The silent majority was interpreted by Equatol as acceptance of his insane, warmongering rhetoric. Most of the tribe was far too afraid of the shark priest to dare and openly protest him. Much like a shark amidst a frenzied, bloody feeding, no logic remained in Equatol. His savage appetites could only be satisfied with the spilling of blood. The paths of violence had long been forgotten by most. The tribe migrated from its more primitive past toward a brighter and more civilized future under the guidance of the Moon Mothers. Certainly the loss of Mama Annie stung. Most quite clearly understood that the best way to celebrate her memory was to continue in the legacy of peace, and not regress backwards toward cannibalistic violence. However, a tree understands its roots better than no other, and the Carcarian tribe knew the futility of defying an alpha predator. No way existed to reason with the shark frenzied in bloodlust. You either got out of its way or were its next meal. Such was the way of Equatol. Such was the way of Dagon. As if in synchronicity with the impending carnage, the sky brooded with dark and ominously foreboding clouds, heavy with rain and signaling a storm on the horizon. The sea stirred with tempestuous angst, and normally still waters swirled with growing agitation. Worst of all was the celestial sign. Just the night before, a lush and full moon was overcome with a bloody crimson hue, and later in that very night, the chief priestess of the Moon Mothers was ferociously killed. Everything pointed to a resurgence of Dagon, and no one but Equatol seemed to be excited about that prospect. In days long past, a bold few ventured into the deep waters where the great shark resided. Greedy offerings of human blood and flesh were made to appease the emissary of Dagon. Often those sacrifices failed to work, and entire boats of tribesmen were consumed along with their offered sacrifices. Such was the way of Dagon and his shark priests. Worship of the Moon Mother carried no such risks. She taught men how to grow crops from the land and how to build a sophisticated society, which greatly contributed to her popularity. However, the mere fact of the existence of Dagon incarnate substantiated his worship, until a queer thing happened. The shark priests ventured out into the deep water and cast their blood sacrifices into still waters. The great shark simply failed to appear. Sure, some lesser incarnates of Dagon stirred and devoured the offerings, but the great shark, the one as large as a mountain, hid away. Priests redoubled their efforts and made the ocean run red with tribute, but Dagon forsook them, and the great shark passed into the lore of legend. Only Equatol remained as an archaic reminder of the almost extinct tradition of worshipping Dagon incarnate. In one tragic heartbeat, everything changed. All the signs pointed to Dagon's imminent return. The worship of the great shark never originated in trivial moral virtues, like love. Dagon's motivated his followers with crippling fear. The shark priests used that terror to compel their kin to unspeakable acts of violence, which made them as loathed as they were expected among the Carcarian tribe. Equatol continued.
The great Dagon has judged our tribe, only to find us weak. Only through blood sacrifice will we find redemption, and he will either take offered blood or our own. This is the choice. Dagon cares little from where the blood flows, only that the waters run red.
A nervous voice then interrupted. Equatol, why do we even need to venture into the deep waters? The Moon Mothers abolish such a need. We have houses, and then we can grow food from the ground itself. Bounties of fish can be caught from the shallows. We don't need to go to the deep waters where Dagon lives. We should leave him to his way, and he to ours. Equatol snarled at the defiant words, and leapt from the rock he had been perched upon with savage grace. The shark priest unsheathed his flint knife and growled threateningly, baring his sharp triangular teeth. He marched straight over to the defiant man, who groveled in prostrate submission. With barely any effort, Equatol heft the man into the air with his free arm and pressed his sacrificial knife into his exposed throat.
Carlin, do you dare question the will of Dagon? Perhaps you contain the lifeblood the great shark demands.
Equatol spat. Kalin merely whimpered in tearful regret, and Equatol cast his fear-stricken form aside with a heavy thud. The shark priest realized his message had been met with far more dissent than he had first perceived. The shark priest widened his stance to combat ready, and pivoted to address the crowd surrounding him.
Tell me, is this how all of you feel? Has the Moon Mother castrated courage from my once proud people? No wonder Dagon forsook us. I swear upon the blood waters that I will disembowel and feed you all to the great shark myself. Go ahead and test me, and defy the will of Dagon,
Equatol threatened. No members of the Carcarian tribe possessed the might to defy Equatol. The shark priest invoked the same crippling fear as the deity he worshipped. His offer was simple: submit or die. While none present agreed with the madness Equatol solicited, none wished to suffer a pointless death. One by one, each member of the tribe fell to prostrate submission, just as Kal En had.
That is better. Much better,
Equatol smugly growled. Part 3. Out to Sea. Equatol leaned heavily into the mast of the medium-sized wooden ship. Such seafaring vessels had been relics of a past age. The shark priest's blood boiled with excitement as he sailed toward a new destiny for himself and his tribe. He cast a glance back at his reluctant crew. The vocal supporter of the Moon Mothers, Kal En, stood out the most, but at the same time represented the dominant sentiments of the Carcarian tribe. Kal's face wore heavy wrinkles and dripped with nervous sweat. With trepidation, Kal En and his fellow tribesmen rowed into the deep waters. They rowed with the urgency that their lives depended on it, which was not far from the truth. Either a monstrous shark god of legend lived in this water, or they rowed out under the leadership of a madman. Perhaps a little of both were true. Whatever reality held in the future, all were certain that a bloody reckoning awaited them. Equatol licked his sharp triangular teeth and gripped his shark-tooth necklace so tightly that it cut him. He looked at the crimson beads of life force as they trickled off the palm of his hand with slow, steady drips. The drops of blood fell to the deck of the wooden ship with heavy thuds that were accentuated by the shark priest's craven imagination. The great shark Dagon, would be offered a blissful feast of sacrifice and blood, unlike any other. He imagined an ocean so rich in bloody offerings that it literally ran red. Equatol entered a delusional religious trance that bordered on sexual ecstasy. Only he held such craven and fanatical views, and that fact greatly hurt Equatol. Dagon had not left the Carcarian tribe. The Moon Mothers had led them astray. The shark priest thought of Mama Eni, the grandmother recently murdered at his very hands. Her dying words hung heavy in his ears. "You shall become one with your God, but I promise you will not like the reality of it." And the weeks prior to the great sacrifice to Dagon, Equatol had taken pride in Mama Eni's last words. They served as a validation of the worship of Dagon. However, now that he set out into the open waters, headed for the deep seas, the elder Moon Mother's words seemed to be more of an ominous and foreboding warning, almost a threat. Equatol shook his head in an attempt to shake away the doubts with them. He reasoned.
Doubts are the ways of the Moon Mothers and weak men like Kal En. I am a shark priest, and I am mighty. I serve the great predator of the deep waters. Dagon only craves blood and cares not from where it flows.
The chant of blood calmed Equatol's nerves. He looked again at Kal En and met eyes with him. The tribesman could barely hold eye contact for even the briefest of instants, before hiding away from the eviscerating glare. The shark priest reinvigorated with haughty confidence.
Weak men like Kalen are simply not worthy of the savage radiance of Dagon. Perhaps I should throw him in as a sacrifice as well.
Equatol chuckled in thought. He returned his attentions back to the task at hand. The tribe had reached the outskirts of the deep waters, the doorway to the realm of the great shark Dagon. Equatol held up his hand, issuing a command for his 5-vessel fleet to stop. All quieted to complete silence, unwilling to unintentionally evoke the wrath of the great sea god. In that uncomfortable long moment of silence, minds raced with paranoid thoughts. The ships had been alive with a cacophony of noise just moments prior. Rhythmic drumbeats complemented burdened grunts from the overworked oarsmen. Prayers to the great shark had also mingled, almost musically, with the pleas of mercy from the captives. With threat and force of will, Equatol had convinced his kin to fall upon their neighboring tribe, the Omani. Dagon needed sacrifices, and that made the equation simple. It was either the Omani or the Carcarians. Dagon cared not from where the blood flowed, and only that it did. The peaceful ways instilled by the Moon Mothers weakened the Carcarian tribe and empowered Equatol's dark purpose. The Shark Priest was their sole heir to a savage and cannibal past. He was mighty and well versed in the ways of war. Dagon had blessed him with stature and great strength. Just as no one could oppose the great shark, only fools dared to resist the will of Equatol. Truth be told, had Equatol been able, he would have sacrificed his entire tribe along with the Omani captives. He could hardly tell the difference between the two when he looked at them with the eyes of fearful judgment. However, the Shark Priest needed some followers to rebuild the cult of Dagon. Equatol lamented that, and shook his head disapprovingly at Dagon's unworthy supplicants.
We move into the deep waters, slow and steady. Make the tooth with our ships.
Equatol broke the silence with a stern, spoken command, his words just loud enough to be heard, but not the roaring thunder of moments earlier. The ocean had changed at this point, and went from being a mere boat length in depth to nearly bottomless. Tribesmen of both the Carcarian and Omani gazed back at their island, which now looked like a heavily thickened line on the horizon. Oarmen slowly raised their sails, and the 5 ships entered the deep waters in the shape of a shark's tooth. Part 4. God of the Red Waters. Kalen regretted everything, and one tragic night the good fortunes of his tribe reversed. First, Mama Eni was murdered, and then the shark priest Equatol set the tribe on a fool's path of bloodlust. Who cares if Dagon exists? We are men, not fish, and do not belong in the deep waters, Kalen thought. Kal suspected that Equatol murdered his own grandmother to fuel his religious madness, but dared not say it aloud. The tribesmen, like his fellows, lamented the foolishness they were embarked upon, but all were powerless to oppose it. The shark priest's course of self-destruction would consume them all. The boats traveled about a dozen or so ship lengths into the deep ocean and set anchors on Equatol's command, and the seafaring vessels maintained a shark-tooth formation. The shark priest rose to lift prayers to the ocean and Dagon. Kal-En knew this from nightmarish bedtime stories. The rites of blood had become more of a threat to quell bad behavior amongst naughty children. Never would Kal have imagined that he would witness the ritual in person. He cowered as the shark priest spoke, as if he could hide within the safety of the ship. But no one was safe in the deep waters.
Great Dagon, we beseech thee. Long have we forgotten your ways. Forgive us our trespasses, and bless us with savage strength. Humbly we offer up this blood feast as supplication for our sins. Hear us, and give us a sign of your greatness.
Equatol boomed. The setting sun and brooding storms overhead mingled with the shark priest's words, adding supernatural effect to the prayer. Equatol impatiently motioned to Kal-En, who stumbled forward bearing a large bucket of bloody pig entrails. The tribesman tripped and nearly spilled the contents over the deck, but Merciful Moon did not.
Idiot! We shall see if Dagon counts you worthy this day. Get away from me before I cast you into the water myself.
Equatol spat. The shark priest turned his full attention back to the invocation of the great shark. He scooped generous bloody handfuls of gore and painted himself red with it. The priest then motioned for the first sacrifices to be brought to him. 3 pigs were pulled forward. The porcine beasts despised being on board the wooden ship, and instinct told them that their lives would soon end. One of them, in panic, broke free, and in a mad scramble darted right off the ship into the choppy ocean waters. It squealed a gurgled plea for salvation, and swam desperately back to the ship's flank. Swirling waves pulled the pig out ever deeper into the open water. Impossibly, through sheer strength of will, the pig made it back to the ship. The poor beast was entirely unwilling to give up on living. Many of the crew pitied the creature and even cheered for it to make it back. Equatol paid it no mind and ceremonially painted the other pigs in crimson gore. The ocean swine suddenly froze, and a mask of shock and disbelief appeared on its face. Violent bubbles erupted around it. The pig bobbed downward and then thrust almost entirely out of the water, with its lower half immersed in the jaws of a very large shark. Not Dagon, but most certainly a man-eater. The shark then disappeared in a trail of red water. The tribesmen sighed in disappointed regret, lamenting the death of the pig as that of a beloved friend. Equatol continued his ranting to the ocean, barely aware of the spiritual mutiny that had just transpired. The shark priest slit the throats of the deckside pigs and kicked over their dying corpses into the angry ocean.
Dagon demands blood, more blood. Bring the Omani to me,
Equatol demanded with ravenous intent. At that moment it was hard to tell who was crazier, the ocean, the sharks, or Equatol. The crew froze, paralyzed with shock and fear. Equatol stormed over to Osh Kai, the guardsman of the bound Omani captives. With barely any effort, he cast Osh overboard and grabbed an elder weeping Omani. Osh fell into the waters, and his kin raced to throw him a rope to pull him back on board. Osh Kai raised his head out of the waters just long enough to scream as the large sharks ripped him to gory pieces.
Such fate awaits all who question the will of Dagon,
Equatol threatened. The shark priest then dragged the old man by the hair on his head toward the bow of the ship to sacrifice him. Kal-En sprung to action, albeit behind Equatol's back.
Equatol is mad. He means to kill us all. I've no doubt Dagon waits in these waters. But the great shark will only devour us all. We must flee back to the island before it's too late. This is not the fate the Moon Mothers want for us,
Kal pleaded. Solemn nods of agreement affirmed Kal's words. Commands exchanged between the ships, prompting captured Omani to be freed from their bonds. The other ships rowed with haste back to the safety of the shallows. The deep ocean pulsed with blood. The large shark swimming in it festered the water to frenzied life. The distant ships sailed back first. Crew members on Equatol's ship remained fearful to confront the brutal shark priest.
And what do we do about him? It's simple. We cast him overboard when he notices the others are fleeing, Kal-En assured. Much easier said than done,
another tribesman scoffed. Equatol threw the butchered pieces of the old man overboard and noticed his fleet of ships had abandoned him. He marched over to the stern of his vessel and cursed.
Traitors! I will spill your blood in a red wake of ruin. Dagon shall feast upon your unworthy corpses.
The shark priest spat blasphemies, and the 4 ships fled as if the devil himself chased them. Suddenly, a mountain-sized wave formed and nearly knocked over Equatol's anchored ship. A triangular dorsal fin broke the ocean surface, which was easily as large as the 20-man boat. Dagon had arrived. The tribesmen on board the flagship froze with shock and awe, wide-mouthed and fearful to the point of hysterical weeping. Equatol became even more animated and directed his deity towards the fleeing ships.
Chase them down, catch the traitors, and show them the power of the sea. Devour the infidels,
the shark priest commanded. Impossibly, the great shark seemed to heed Equatol's command, giving chase to the fleeing prey like the alpha predator it was. Dagon moved like a force of nature. Its huge body sped towards the ship, submerging then catching one of the unfortunate vessels in its powerful maw. With a tsunami of force, splintered wood and mangled corpses exploded from Dagon's toothy mouth. The great shark then dove deep into the ocean, leaving a bloody whirlpool in its wake. The deep ocean revealed the atrocity hiding within through giant waves, and thereby heightened already crippling levels of fear. Great tides of water pushed and pulled against the flagship, clearly informing all aboard that the great shark circled about the vessel. A pass under the ship heft it dozens of feet into the air and nearly capsized it.
I told you all. I knew. Only I knew that Dagon would never forsake us. Behold your God in all his glory. Kneel in reverence, infidels, and beg for your worthless lives,
Equatol taunted. The shark priest had become so lost in his religious fervor that he hardly noticed that all the Omani captives on board his vessel had been freed. With froth-laden words, he screamed prayers of vindication. Though he deemed his kin completely unworthy, Equatol realized that their true purpose was to bear witness to that most sacred of moments. It was an ascension. Mama Eni was right. Equatol and his god Dagon were one. The shark priest closed his eyes and stretched out his arms to drink in the divine glory of that moment. The flagship raised up on a crested wave and rotated starboard, nearly capsizing once again. Kalin seized the moment and thrust his shoulder into Equatol's chest, sending him overboard. Equatol did not fall far from the vessel. He actually managed to catch the side railing and struggled mightily to pull himself back aboard. Because his eyes were closed, he did not suspect that Kal had been the one to cast him overboard. The shark priest opened up his eyes, and they stung from the salt water. Through blurred vision, he saw Kal-En holding an oar out to him.
Perhaps I was wrong about you, Kyle. Perhaps you are worthy,
Equatol complimented. It was then that the shark priest's vision returned to clarity. He saw the freed Omani standing hand in hand with his Carcarian tribesmen. Equatol snarled, and his eyes fixed into a rage-frenzied stare.
Traitors!
He spat.
Back into the deep waters with you, and be one with your god, Equatol!
Kal-En defiantly shouted, and with a well-placed whack from the oar sent Equatol into the ocean abyss. The wave pulled the shark priest deep underwater. The sun had fled away, but curiously powerful bright moonlight clearly illuminated the waters. Equatol saw the mighty Dagon turn on one of the lesser sharks, if one could call such a large shark lesser. It was easily the length of 4 grown men. Dagon's jaws snapped on the predatory fish, biting its hindquarters clean away, as the shark tried to flee. Equatol arrogantly laughed. His god was mighty indeed. The lesser sharks panicked and raced away back into the dark depths. Many did not make it, only to be brutally devoured. The ocean water was so drenched that even under the moonlight it was thick with blood. Equatol could even taste it in his breath-holding state. The priest's lungs burned from lack of air. He muscled his way back to the surface, each desperate stroke in agony. Equatol impossibly made it back to the torrid surface, and with a greedy gulp swallowed a life-saving breath of air. The shark priest looked for the trader ships. All had fled away. Just the flagship remained within striking distance of Dagon. It was close to the shallows, but not yet safely reached them. Adrenaline-enriched eyesight enabled the shark priest to clearly see Kal-En under the moonlight. Even now the tribesmen cowered fearfully. Equatol bobbed in the water, his bloody body paint washing away. He raised a prayer to his deity Dagon, and implored the great shark to enact vengeance on his behalf.
Great Dagon, I ask you not to suffer the heretic to live. Kal-En the unbeliever doubted your greatness. He defied your will. Devour the traitor, and let the world know of your might.
As if stirred by the shark priest's words, the great Dagon moved. Its immense dorsal fin once again broke the surface water. this time almost right on top of Equatol. The shark priest rose on the wave of the great shark, as if it were an attack dog let loose on his enemies. Equatol fell back to the ocean surface, almost gently, and he saw the great shark fly with lightning-like speed towards the flagship. The immense tsunami the great shark created pushed the flagship well into the shallows, leaving Equatol bewildered. It appeared that devouring the flagship was never Dagon's intention. Had the shark god desired to consume the vessel, it would have dived after the ship, just as it had hunted moments prior. Dagon turned just before the shallows and now faced Equatol. The immense shark sped towards the shock-filled shark priest before ominously diving deep into the ocean. He gazed up one final time and saw Ka-En mocking him with laughter. The flagship was far too distant in the shallows to accurately see, but Equatol knew for certain that Ka-En laughed at him. The shark priest felt a swirling whirlpool of water pull his body beneath the surface. Equatol pleaded with his frenzied and bloodthirsty god, his words nothing more than muffled bubbles. Then he heard familiar words once again in his mind. It was Mama Eni. "Equatol, be careful what you ask for. You shall become one with Dagon, but I promise you, you will not like the reality of it." Under silver moonlight, the shark priest heard his grandmother speak for the last time. The bloody waters revealed nothing at first, just darkness followed by bubbles and streaks of large silver teeth. An impossibly large mouth closed in on the shark priest, and with a savage bite sent Equatol into eternity. The end. This was an audio recording read and written by Luis Armando Lopez. Copyright 2017. All rights reserved. Recorded at Santa Fe Center Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico.